Hello and welcome to another open source workplace video. If this is your first time coming across the channel, please hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you're alerted to all upcoming videos. I'm very happy to welcome back Andrew Mawson. Andrew is the owner of Advanced Workplace Associates. Andrew, how are you doing, sir? Great to see you
I'm
again.
great. I'm great. It's lovely and warm here in London today, and we're gradually shifting out of lockdown. So fingers crossed we should be able to have a beer in the local pub shortly. So it's good.
There you go. We can all look forward to those things there, Andrew. So over the last number of weeks, Andrew, we have spoken about, managing the virtual workforce. We've went through your research, and, I'd like to dig into that a little bit more. And, we've spoken as well as part of that research, another research that you've done in the past, the 6 factors of knowledge workers' productivity. And what I'd like to do is over the next few weeks, maybe dig into some of those factors. And the one I'd really like to talk about today is social cohesion. So let's start with, what is that? What is social cohesion?
Well, it's like a sort of a fancy scientific term for business friendship, really, Steve. That's the way I describe it. And as a Mancunian, I kind of recognize that a lot of people in the north are very, very friendly, and it enables people to be able to tell each other the truth in a funny sort of way, without necessarily feeling completely, annihilated in the conversation. So the social cohesion for me, as I say, business friendship, and it's kind of important because if you think about it, an organization is really the aggregation of the knowledge and the energy of all of its people. And that energy and knowledge is pointed at a target, which is to create something or generate some value. So the social cohesion component of this is really about getting people comfortable with each other so that they are able to be supportive and to be generous with their knowledge and their ideas. But also, it seems to me, the more people you know well, the more you know about what they know. And so, if you think about it, the more people you are socially connected to and comfortable with, and like, the more you're likely to see a comfortable flow of information. And in effect, I think if you look at the 6 factors, fundamentally what they do is lead to what we will call a psychologically safe environment, where I am able to be myself, I'm able to contribute my ideas, I'm able to challenge other people without necessarily them feeling bruised or damaged or upset. And we can do this in the spirit of, perpetual improvement and innovation, and a supportive environment is what's going to give you those sorts of things. So that I think is, for me, is social cohesion. Now, the interesting thing is, of course, so a lot of people say, well, that's good, it's a team level, but I'm not talking about a team level. I'm also talking about communities, teams of teams. I'm also talking about up and down the organization, people feeling comfortable to be open enough with senior people, both to enable those senior people to deliver their value to them, because, people who have been around the organization a long time have got, brains full of good stuff, which at some point could be very useful to people in other parts of the organization. So we don't want to kind of chop them off as being a sort of, a power base that somehow we can't touch, or these people are so powerful I wouldn't want to bother them, kind of thing. So there's this idea of social cohesion is quite pervasive and creates the conditions under which I think organizations can be way more productive than they perhaps traditionally are, with hierarchical structures and people feeling like they can't talk to each other or maybe tell the truth sometimes.
Yeah, so what can organizations do to develop and sustain social cohesion?
It's a great question, isn't it? I mean, I can tell you what we do, because we tend to live by the 6 factors these days. So, I mean, we go out of our way. I mean, I personally go out of my way to try to create a kind of hierarchical-less organization. So we operate on the basis of a relatively small group of people who have some role in leadership, but with a big pool of associates who, all connect as one community. So, and I guess to some degree, my own behavior, I try, and it's not always that easy to to create a very socially connected situation. So, and supporting people in doing what they do, giving good guidance and good clarity as much as you can in a changing world. So that's one thing we do. We also do a lot of work. We run social events online every month. We've always run face-to-face events where we bring all our teams together. We plan to do that before the COVID-19 thing, and that rather stymied us. So we had a plan to bring everybody, flew everybody from around the world into the UK, and unfortunately we had to abandon it. But we still ran an equivalent event online. So partly educational, partly social, partly fun, and creating a little bit of lightheartedness around the organisation as well as another part of it. The other thing we've done recently is we use a piece of software that we think is pretty cute, which is called Spark Collaboration, which basically sets up coffees between different members of the team across the world over, maybe one or two a month, just so as people get to know each other. When people join us, we have an interview with them online, which goes on. Everybody's invited to listen, but the interview is recorded, and so there's a kind of an opportunity for other people to tune into that to get to know people as we go. We do a lot of training with people. When we train, we set it up so that people coming into the organization have to go and get to know lots of people. So, I'm sure there's lots of other things that organizations around the world are doing, but I think what we've recognized is, and I think this is where organizations need to kind of focus, is we've recognized we need a strategy, a continuous strategy for developing social cohesion and maintaining it and keeping the conditions such that people feel very comfortable and happy to be generous with their ideas and their knowledge and all that sort of stuff. So lots you can do. Not that it's rocket science, by the way. I mean, there are, going forward, I mean, it does require a slightly different leadership style. I mean, a little bit more democratic, maybe a little bit more open. And if you look at the research, more transformational, as opposed to being very directive and very supervisory. So if you're an organization that is very hierarchical and very status conscious, if you're going to make the best out of the virtuality in the virtual world, and the knowledge you have on the team, you're going to have to start thinking a bit differently about the way you manage the organization, I would think.
That's another very interesting point. So obviously, you have a very distributed workforce, and you've intentionally developed your organization to be that way.
Yeah.
Those that have relied on the physical environment to bring people together to allow social cohesion, it sounds like they have to be more intentional about how to manage that virtual workforce.
Yeah, I think so. I think what's interesting to me at the moment is a lot of people are reporting, and we've seen it on a number of studies, that people are feeling more connected with their organizations and their teams now than they did before COVID-19, which is kind of ironic because a lot of people are suggesting that, we have to have a physical environment in order for people to feel connected and so on. And so, it seems to me what has happened is that people, particularly leaders particularly, are recognizing the need to communicate more now than they ever did when they were in the physical workplace. And, maybe what we're doing is we're learning some things about how we should have been doing things anyway in the new world. But to your point, yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a leader, I think you need to be spending more time talking with your people, getting to know them as human beings, as opposed to necessarily, some resource that you might have had working for you. I think you need to know more about what's going on in their worlds. You need to sort of feel their pain a little bit. I mean, you need to, if for instance you've got something going on, you don't know when you come on a Zoom call whether your member of the team has just had a blazing row with the kids, or they've got a relative that's passed away because of coronavirus, or you've no idea, and so you have to work
Mm.
a little harder to tune into their worlds and to understand what's going on. And that is part of, I think, social cohesion. But it's not just between the leader and the individual. It's also between individuals in the team and team members, working with other team members. You've got to create people have to take some responsibility for the cohesion that they themselves create. It's not just about leaders and all that stuff. Everybody has to step up a little bit and start taking more responsibility proactively for the way they kind of interact with each other. I think that's what we're saying.
Yeah, and sort of just to finish up then, so obviously we are in a very fluid environment at the moment where
Mm.
offices are open, some people are returning, some people will continue to work from home, and that will be for a period of time.
Yeah.
How should organizations think about managing social cohesion as those two things pull? And we don't know
Mm.
who all is going to go back to the office and who's going to
Yeah.
remain virtual.
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
It's a very interesting question, that, Steve. That's a really interesting question. It's something I've been pondering the last few days. Because why this is all working now is because we're all largely working away. We're all largely working, we're equal in a sense. We're all looking at each other through a Zoom call or a Teams call or whatever. We're all working email. We are everything's equalized. And of course, meetings actually are being reported to be better because you haven't now got 10 people in a meeting, 5 of whom are in a meeting room in London or New York or something, and the other 5 are on a Zoom call feeling like they're the second class citizens. We're actually all on the same wavelength now. So as I think the trick really, and this is kind of important, I think, is to use this time to evolve to a much more digital culture. And by that I mean that people's technology skills and confidence is up, upgraded, if you like, through training, through trying things out, through encouraging people to work online as opposed to think about this as just being a short-term jaunt. I think that back to the point we were making about things like social cohesion, trust, vision, goal clarity, supervisory support, all of those things need to be strengthened right now. Because I think what you then have is you have the potential for an organization to be able to operate into the long term in a virtual model with a digital culture so that the workplace, the physical workplace, is used as an added value
Mm.
component. I mean, when we bring people together in the same space, it's a very rich experience. And I would never say that you shouldn't do that. Absolutely, it's a rich thing to do, and you need physical places in order to do that. Whether you need to own them yourself is another story, but you're gonna, that is the pinnacle really of communication when you're bringing them together. And of course, it's expensive. So in the new world, I think what you have to do is learn all of those things that enable you to be digitally effective, but use the space in a way which recognizes its value. And the danger is that you don't do that, and you go back to what we'll call an office-based culture,
Hmm. Hmm.
where the remote worker is still the second-class citizen. And I think if you do that, you'll have missed a huge opportunity. And we're certainly encouraging organizations that aspire to, a more modernized culture, a modernized approach to work, to right now to strengthen all of those things that keep them virtual, and think about the need for face-to-face connectivity in a different way. Now, back to the question of social cohesion. Look, I'm a great believer in bringing people together to drink beer and to chat through stuff and get to know people as people. And that has a huge part. I mean, as we move forward, you wouldn't want to deny people that opportunity, but you don't need it for most organizations unless there's a particular reason. That social cohesion can be developed in an online model, and I think people are beginning to realize that now, that maybe they hadn't thought about it before, to be honest, Steve.
And just, I know I said that was the last question, but something just followed up with me, and it's
Mm,
to do with a personal experience I had this week where I was fortunate enough to speak to young women, a women's next gen conference, and one of the concerns that was raised there was, they're starting their career. How do they develop and cultivate relationships
mm,
within their organizations, outside their organizations, in this environment? What
mm,
advice or guidance would you give for them?
mm. So my advice is, well, really two or threefold, really. The first one is, when you're bringing new people in this model, you really have to be quite structured about how you help them to create their own networks. Because otherwise, all those people who've got great networks and have been in the organization for ages and are nicely connected together, can basically blank them out. So in most jobs today, you need to build networks, and those networks shouldn't just be about you know your job. I think increasingly organizations need to be thinking about creating other networks, like people who play sport, people who play
Yeah.
football, people who play volleyball, people who are interested in music, people who are interested in art. Just finding sort of topics to connect people on, and so create networks through that kind of route. So I think that's number one. I think number two is, there's something, particularly working with teams and Facebook Workplace, all those sorts of things. You have to make yourself visible. You need to be proactively visible, because if you're not, people will, out of sight is out of mind. So we certainly encourage all our team to, we have a team on our team setup, which is all about social. So people are swapping notes about their experiences of going for walks during, photographs of cows and, sunsets and goodness knows what. So I think, being visible online, I think is really, really important as well. And I think the organization has to, proactively go out of its way to create these situations in a way that they don't in the workplace, intriguingly.
Mm.
One of the things that's always amazed me, if you do a little bit of a survey, you ask people on a floor, maybe as a floor's got 200 people on, how many people do you think you work with on this floor? And, they might say 10 or 20. And you ask them the question, how many of the people that would you think you are socially well connected to? You could have a beer with or have a coffee. Number comes down a lot. So, 200 people on a floor is 200 potential brains I have access to. But, and people will walk past each other in the corridor
Hmm.
every day. They might not even say hello. They'll just get on, their head down, do their work, and they might know their own people. But every one of these brains is a source of potential knowledge. And
Hmm.
the more people you know, the more knowledge you have access to. And most organizations don't even think about that as a resource. So it's a huge opportunity if you think
Hmm.
about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and of course, but in a virtual model, it becomes more obvious that you need those connections. You needed them even before this all happened,
Right. Right.
but now you need them even more, and it has to be
Yeah.
done very, very consciously.
Great. Well, thank you, Andrew, as always. And we'll put links in the comments below, or the section below, for people who want to reach out to Andrew, learn a
Yeah,
little bit more about Advanced Workplace Associates. But Andrew, as always, thank you, and look forward to our next conversation.
it's a pleasure, Steve. Have a good week.
Thanks. Take care, mate.